Ho ho ho, scaredy cats, it's me, Scaredy Matt. It's that special time of year where everything just feels a little bit more magical. The snow is falling, the fireplace is roaring, and children everywhere count the days until jolly old St. Nick pays them a visit. And I'd love to talk about a relevant movie, but for some reason, I decided I would commit to covering all of the House movies after not even enjoying the first one a little bit. I thought that would be a funny thing to do to myself. The grave grows ever closer, and we can never get back time that we spend upon this earth. Each minute that goes by leads us inexorably towards oblivion, and I chose to spend 88 minutes of my fleeting existence watching House 2, the second story. I did all of this to myself out of some sort of self-destructive impulse, and that's what hurts the most. To describe House 2 simply, it's what would happen if cocaine were alive and decided to make a children's horror movie, but also the studio funding the movie said they could only have $3 million. And despite the fact that the tone is really something that's only going to appeal to children, they throw in a bunch of casual homophobia for like no reason. That's House 2, the second story. Couple things to note, House 2 is a sequel in name only. It doesn't have any of the characters from the first movie, and Jesus, I never thought I'd miss them. Nor does it mention them or make any sort of oblique reference to them or the events of the previous film. It doesn't take place in the same house. It's an entirely original story. And I use that term loosely. They attached the house name to it because they wanted to ride the coattails of a slightly less shitty movie, I guess. There's nothing to recommend in this movie. It's not scary, doesn't even try to be. It's not funny, but it tries very hard to be, and literally every character, with one notable exception who we'll get to later, is insufferable. Worst of all, though, the film features tons of puppets, but they're all bone dry. Some of the dustiest, crummiest puppets you'll ever see. Desiccated puppets that look like somebody pulled them out of a fucking pyramid. Would it have killed them to spritz the puppets with a little bit of water before shooting? Because if it would have, they should have done it anyway, and then maybe we wouldn't have had this movie because they'd all be dead. I don't mean that. That's a terrible thing to say. I'm just very fragile right now. The story of this movie is the oldest cliche in the book. Completely wrote. You've seen it a million times. Stop me if you've heard this one before. A couple gives away a baby because a ghost cowboy is looking for some kind of mysterious skull. 25 years later, protagonist Jesse McLaughlin inherits their giant mansion and moves in with his girlfriend. He also invites his friend Charlie and Charlie's girlfriend who wants to be a singer, but that's not important to the story at all, despite the fact that the film wastes a lot of your time with it anyway. While rummaging through some of his family stuff, Jesse finds a photo of his great-great-grandfather, also named Jesse McLaughlin. He was an Old West outlaw. That Jesse had found a mysterious crystal skull somewhere. Explanation not given. That makes you immortal, but also I think grants wishes. They don't really explain what it does very well, and every time they do, it's something different. This led to a falling out with his partner in crime. Slim Razor is the name of that character. Naturally, Jesse and Charlie dig up his great-great-grandfather's grave and just, I hate Charlie so much. I hate his guts. Never before have I been watching a horror movie and been scared that a character would survive. Spoiler alert, he does. He's there the whole time, constantly talking.
You did. Hey, Jess, what you doing there, huh? Come on, Joe, give it. It's private.
Hey, this is cool. Looks like it's old. What is it?
Come on.
There's nothing down here. Let's quit. I don't care if all the money in the world is down here.
So anyway, of course, great-great-grandpa is undead, but was buried anyway. And also he has the skull in his coffin, and he tries to kill them both, but then he's cool and is like, call me Gramps. They get to hanging out and drinking and then drunk driving together. And then Charlie invites a shitload of people to Jesse's house for a Halloween party without Jesse's permission, and Jesse doesn't even react to that. Like, that's a pretty rude thing to do, but he doesn't even, like, care at all. So, of course, what happens then, you see, is a caveman runs into the party, steals the skull, and also throws Kane Hodder in a gorilla suit over a railing. The boys give chase, and the thing is, you see, that the caveman came from a pocket dimension upstairs where it's dinosaur times. You know, like in a cartoon. Anyway, they get back the skull, but a pterodactyl steals it and takes it back to its nest. So then they get back the skull again, but accidentally bring back a baby pterodactyl and dog caterpillar to their world. I cannot stress enough how none of the incredibly bonkers words I am saying to you to describe this movie's fever dream of a plot figure into the story whatsoever. Case in point, Jesse's ex is at the party and non-consensually kisses him. Jesse's girlfriend's boss sees this, and also he's played by Bill Maher. Gross. Jesse's girlfriend gets upset and leaves the movie with Bill Maher and Charlie's girlfriend. They're just gone. Just that whole plot line is just dropped. So anyway, a bunch of Aztecs steal the skull, and the boys want to go retrieve it, but they're interrupted by an electrician named Bill, played by John Ratzenberger from Cheers. This is the closest the movie comes to being connected to the previous one. Like, they didn't get back the guy from Cheers they had in the first movie, but they did get a new guy from Cheers, so that's something. Credit where credit is due. Bill is actually pretty great. A wonderful character who briefly makes this movie entertaining.
Listen, fellas, we got a little problem in the other room. I think you better come have a look.
Look, Bill, I'm sorry, but this really isn't a good time. Why don't you pack it up and come back tomorrow?
I think we better go in the other room and have a look. Looks like you got some kind of alternate universe in there or something.
Thanks.
You know, if hell was nothing but despair, eventually you'd get used to it, right? Like, no matter how bad it is, eventually you're just going to become numb and it can't hurt you anymore. Hell has to give you hope so that it can take it away from you. And that's what Bill is like in this movie. He reminds you, in the middle of the endless torment that is House 2, the second story, that good characters and good stories can exist in the world, and then leaves. And you're stuck with this one and these characters. So they go to Aztec land, where the Aztecs are about to sacrifice a woman who does not get a speaking line or a name, and is the main love interest of the movie. Then it's Thanksgiving, and the gang sit down to eat a turkey, but uh-oh, here comes Slim Razor. He and Jesse have an incredibly underwhelming and poorly edited gunfight with, like, wipes in the middle of it. So the police show up and fire blindly into the house. Jesse kills Slim, or re-kills him, I guess, receives the skull and brings it to Gramps, who tells him, you know what, I'm just gonna die anyway, it's time for me to die. Cool. They embrace, and Gramps tells him to get what he wants from the skull and then get rid of it. What Jesse wants, of course, is to go back in time to the Old West with all the other remaining characters, including Charlie, who has a life in the present. Like, Jesse doesn't even ask if it's cool that he brought him back in time to live in cowboy times. And also, neither of them showed any interest in being cowboys before this. So Jesse leaves the magic skull at Gramps' grave on top of a pile of rocks, even though it's been stressed multiple times throughout the movie that the skull must never fall into the wrong hands. And that has, in fact, been the narrative thrust of the entire movie. Who cares though? The movie doesn't, so why should you? The end. Now, it's not House 2's fault that I made myself watch it, so it probably isn't fair that I hold it in such contempt. It is, after all, just a bad movie. I've watched bad movies before, I will watch them again. But here's the thing. I have 2 more of these movies to watch, and then write about 1,000 words about. House 2, the second story, somehow has an 8% approval rating on Rotten Tomatoes. House 3, the horror show, has a 0% rating on Rotten Tomatoes. That's statistically unlikely. I am trapped in a prison of my own design. Merry Christmas, you filthy animals. Hey everybody, it's time for one of your classic Christmas sing-alongs. Bobby the Red-Nosed Babadook had a very shiny nose. And if you ever saw it, you would even say it glows like a light bulb. All of the other Babadooks were very confused by this bit. They were like, why is this funny? I don't think I get it. Then one foggy Christmas Eve, Matt came to him to say, "Bobby, with your nose so bright, these marijuana edibles have me high as a kite." Then all the subscribers loved him, and they shouted out with glee, "Subscribe for more videos at youtube.com/ScaryCatsTV. Hey, have a happy holiday season from me, Bobby Duke. I love you so much.